Hey guys, it's Christina Andino, back again with House History for 2021. This year, we're starting off with an iconic Willow Springs family that is so interesting that I've decided to give them their own 3-part segment. We're starting off with Tiedtville in Willow Springs, where it all began. Second, Santa Fe Speedway, and if you grew up in this area, you will have a special place in your heart for Santa Fe Speedway, so that one will be interesting. And part 3, the Rudy Tiede Farmstead and Liberty Grove. So stay with me and let's go back to where it all began in Tiedtville. This is the story of a small town called Tiedtville, built up around the intersection of Wolf Road and 91st Street. It's pretty much unrecognizable now, all torn down with new housing development, townhouses and condos taking its place. But it's a fascinating story and one that I wanted to tell so that it's not ever forgotten. So it starts in 1848 when families of German immigrants first come to America. Henry Bodecker Sr. is born in 1809, and he comes with his family to Illinois and buys 10 acres of land roughly around 55th Street in Brainerd, but there's not enough trees for lumber. He's a woodworker, so he sells it. He buys 20 acres over on 87th and Wolf Road. And he puts up a mill and he resumes building furniture and doors, cabinets, and also coffins, actually, because there were no undertakers in the area. Henry has a daughter, Julie and Carolyn, and 3 sons, Carl and Henry Jr., who both served in the Civil War, and Will. The Bodecker home is still standing, actually, near the bend in Wolf Road near Liberty Grove subdivision. Many people probably don't realize it, but Henry Sr. was one of the founding fathers of Trinity Lutheran Church in Willow Springs. So some of the first meetings of the church were actually held in the basement of that house. Now, at the same time, John Tiede comes from New York with his family, but at 18, he goes west looking for work. He lands in Illinois, and he works on the I&M Canal. After that, he goes to work woodcutting for Henry Bodecker Sr. John falls in love with Henry's daughter, Julie Carolyn, and they marry in 1859. John builds a log cabin, and 4 children are born: Charles, Henry, John, and Fred. Remember Fred because he will figure prominently in this story. So John eventually builds a small home on 87th Street, and they have 4 more children: Mary, Ed, Louise, and John. And then sometime around 1870, he builds his final and biggest home that is still standing on 87th Street, and there's a picture of it in here. So fast forward a few years to Fred. He's a little bit older, and at this point he has big business ambitions and foresees a great opportunity to capitalize on the presence of over 2,000 ditch diggers working on the Des Plaines River sanitary ship canal. And so he opens a tavern with his uncle and partner Henry Bodecker Jr. close to the river at the very end of Wolf Road. With that as success, they build a general store, and then they buy all the land west of 91st Street, which later becomes Santa Fe Park. But for now, Tiede's community is a success and almost immediately acquires a rowdy reputation. The laborers finally had a place to go for a good time, and they arrived in bunches, dirty, full of lice, but hey, they were carrying good money. So 24-ounce schooners of beer were 5 cents, and shots of whiskey were 10. And a popular pastime among the rowdy canal workers was the holding of lice races, a filthy forerunner to the stock car races that would follow in later years. There were now a few farmhouses, the general store, the butcher shop, and the tavern, all clustered along 91st Street at Flag Creek. And with the addition of Tiede's new businesses, it collectively became known as Tiedtville, located in unincorporated Hinsdale and present-day Willow Springs. By the late 1800s, Tiedtville has about 200 residents nestled around 100 acres of woods. After the canal workers leave, Fred now develops a picnic area on a wooded grove near the Santa Fe Railroad stop. The Santa Fe Railroad agrees to make special stops on weekends, and it attracts tons of city dwellers to the picnic site. They would come out for a day or stay in a cabin to hunt and fish. The railroad builds 2 spur tracks, one at the saloon for delivering beer and coal, and the other to bring passengers to the park. Inspired by his successes, Fred constructs several other buildings: a dance pavilion, a restaurant, and a 4-lane bowling alley in a vague half circle. He then decides that his privately owned town should have a post office and he ought to run it. He gets himself appointed postmaster for the district on February 20th, 1899, and he hangs a post office sign in front of his general store. Tiedtville was now an unofficial whistle stop, which meant a lot of times the train wouldn't stop, and people conveniently had to wait around for the next one in the tavern. The picnic grove now had a pavilion with an ice house to cool the beer and a bar. The picnics were so popular that Fred decides to increase his investment and expands the picnic grove to include a $6,000 quarter-mile track for horses and bike races. It was lucrative, with Tied sometimes making $1,500 to $2,000 a day. Fred continues to look for gimmicks to attract customers and keep them busy. He builds a steam-driven merry-go-round, a tin-type gallery, and game booths. He also diverts a low spot on his property from Flag Creek, creating the Santa Fe Lagoon, and rents rowboats for fishing. He builds a baseball diamond inside the racetrack so spectators could view baseball games from the track grandstands. Customers found a full day of entertainment, and some of the more rowdy ones found themselves incarcerated in a small jailhouse he built. He didn't really have any legal authority, but it was his method of crowd control. The picnics became bigger every year, with occasional special attractions like balloon ascent, but one ascent gone awry shut that down fast. Then there was wine climb. He would hang a gallon of wine from the center of the dance pavilion roof, and the first person to climb up and get the wine after 9 p.m. could keep it. Fred also continues to build upon the family's successful annual Farmers Harvest Day picnic. It was a way to help local farmers celebrate, and it was popular well into the 1950s. The Santa Fe train eventually canceled its special arrangement with the park due to rowdiness of passengers. This, along with the Great Depression, adversely impacted Santa Fe Park. The Tiedtville post office was discontinued in 1931, and in 1937, Tiedtville was annexed into Willow Springs. Fred had built a beautiful home across from the park at 91st and Wolf in 1904 for his wife, Amanda Prescott, who he married in 1905 when he was 37. They had 4 sons: Ralph, Howard, who takes over for his dad, and Lawrence and Emery. Emery runs the general store, and actually when he passed in 2013 at 94, it really closed the chapter on his generation and Tiedtville. Now that we know where things started, we'll focus next time on a new chapter where Fred's son Howard takes over in 1946 after Fred's death, and the creation of quarter-mile clay stock car track called Santa Fe Speedway is born in 1953. So join me next time and we'll take a look at an iconic piece of our local history, something so nostalgic to so many: Santa Fe Speedway. Looking down 91st, Wolf Road. So, this is how it looks today. And you can compare that to the other pictures that you'll see of how it looked in the old days.